Anyway, right, so reviews. Tenet. Now, does anyone want to try and give a synopsis of Tenet?
So,
Oh my god.
literally today or yesterday maybe, I was asked what Tenet was about. And I was just like, that's a good question. It's about time sort of goes backwards, but only for some things.
Yeah.
But that's like the gimmick, isn't it? That's not really what it's
Yeah.
about.
Well, yeah. Well,
It's about a dude.
I
He's got to do some stuff.
so I've read the synopsis on IMDb in preparation for this.
Go
So
on.
I might be able to take a stab at it. Okay, so in Tenet, we've got this guy whose name is the protagonist,
Yeah. Who is something Washington is his name. Is
John David Washington.
Yeah.
Which it's weird, this whole the protagonist thing, because the way they talk about that, it seems like it's like a position within the organization rather than a character name.
Yeah, I assumed that as well. Oh well.
But that doesn't really get expanded upon. Anyway,
Yeah.
so he's part of this mission, which is in like an opera house where they're raiding for something, and then, but he's captured, but he takes a suicide pill, which it turns out was a test and like a fake one.
Yeah.
And so he's like, you can be welcomed into this organization, which doesn't have a name, and go sort stuff out.
Yeah.
So
Basically, they're trying to stop World War Three.
yeah, so he's
Yeah.
through this word Tenet, which is like a sort of a password, he finds out about these inverted munitions, which have basically their entropy inverted so they can run backwards through time. And there's evidence that there's going to be a big war about this. So he then tracks down these bullets and who made them and finds Kenneth Branagh's character.
Yeah, it was a
Sator.
real surprise. I didn't know that Kenneth Branagh was in it because I avoided all the adverts because I didn't want to go into this at all. After we watched it, actually, I then went and watched the advert to see if it would have ruined anything. And I mean, the advert was just explosions and shit. Like, doesn't actually sell the
Yeah.
film really at all,
Well, that's the thing, because no one's been trying to be quite secretive about it.
which is a good thing.
It is good. I'm not sure how necessary it was for this film.
Yeah,
Considering we've seen it, I'm still not entirely sure what happened.
yeah,
But
but
yeah. But so Kenneth Branagh's character is basically
evil.
he's going to destroy the world because he's going to die of cancer, and so he wants to bring the whole world down through with him.
Yeah,
So he's going to reverse all of entropy, and that will destroy everything. And so John D. Washington has to work together with Robert Pattinson and Sator's wife, who's played by Elizabeth Debicki, and stop him through inverting time and stuff. And that's basically the plot, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I'd say
Yeah,
that's a
pretty
that's a
much.
pretty good plot.
So if it wasn't obvious from that, I think the main problem for me with Tenet is its plot and its story and characters are kind of a mess.
yeah. It's very confusing, but unlike with Inception, where it's like, oh, this is slightly confusing, but you get the hang of it by the end of the film, this was so confusing throughout. It was just like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah, and the problem with this as well is like there seems like a very deliberate attempt to make this like needlessly confusing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of moments where characters almost turn to camera and go like, "Don't worry if you don't understand it, just go with it." And it's,
Yes, I picked up that.
I mean, they do say several times, don't they? They're
Yeah.
like, oh, don't try to understand it. It's like,
which is really annoying.
Yeah, and I just feel like that was Nolan just being like, "Hey audience, you're dumb.
yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
won't get it."
Which is annoying because the time inversion, like similar to Inception, like the mechanics of what's going on in terms of the gimmick aren't that difficult. Like you do get your head around it through the sort of the situations that happen. But it's
Yeah.
just the plot. It's the who everyone is, what they're doing, this overarching organization. Who are they? What do they do? Where do they come from? That doesn't get answered. The thing about Kenneth Branagh wanting to like commit suicide and then destroy the world, I only worked out from reading about it. It wasn't clear in the film.
Yeah.
Oh really? Oh, I picked up on that.
So I did pick it up in the film. His motivations aren't made clear until like the end of the film.
Yeah,
No.
like the last 20 minutes.
So he's doing all this evil stuff, but I was just like, okay, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't made clear enough why he was doing this stuff.
Yeah, and also like, so well, another problem I've had is like, so the ending is sort of, it sort of devolves into this massive shootout in a sort of a war zone. And I feel like that's almost, I want to say like a lazy ending to it, in terms of like, it seems like a very uncreative way to end a film. And Inception sort of had that, because it had the sort of the Arctic base shootout as well.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like with all the other sort of cool stuff that's happened, like there's the sort of the airport stuff with the plane, and there's the all the inverted fighting and the inverted car chase and stuff. There's some really interesting set pieces there and creative ones. And in the end, it's like, right, people with military fatigues with assault rifles going around shooting things. Oh, okay. It just seems. Yeah. I don't know. I feel there's more interesting ways that ending could have happened, and especially it sort of ends up basically being like, oh, there's a doomsday weapon and we've got to go stop it. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, again, that's something they introduced very late. It's like this weird doomsday thing that's like, oh, 9 pieces of this puzzle or something. I was like, what?
It's
sorry,
like
what?
the algorithm. It's like, okay, what does it? It's like, oh, it reverses entropy. I'm like, but how?
Yeah.
I feel like they did talk about that like quite early on, like, but it just took forever, like, for me to grasp that, oh, this is actually important. I really should be paying attention to this.
Yeah, it's weird. It's strangely difficult to like get into the dialogue. Like, it's so sort of dense and sort of convolutedly delivered. Even when you're listening to it, it's like, I just take none of it in.
I struggled.
Especially when there's like the sound. Some people have said the sound mixing is bad, and it is pretty problematic at points.
It's
like
really
on
fucking loud.
Yeah, well, on the catamarans, there's this essential dialogue going on between Kenneth Branagh and John David Washington, and you can't hear it for shit because there's the sound of the oceans roaring over it. Like, you know, mixing wise, it's over it, so you can't hear what they're saying. It's like, well, this is essential stuff, presumably. They're talking about plutonium.
Also, there's a bit where, obviously, when you're backwards, you speak backwards, so when the forwards people can't understand it. And there's this big scene where Kenneth Branagh's, you know, threatening his wife, and Kenneth Branagh's reversed, and John David Washington's like, oh, try to talk him out of it. And I just couldn't understand Kenneth Branagh at all.
It was difficult.
Yeah. That was also a really confusing scene in terms of, like, because obviously the conversation's happening between someone who's inverted and someone who's not.
Yeah.
And yet it's trying to work, it's really weird trying to work out which direction the you know, who's replying to who and what part.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so it's almost incoherent, that entire conversation. Because it doesn't even make sense logically how one would be able to understand the other if the responses are coming in the wrong order for at least one of them, if not both of them, surely.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just very interesting though, because obviously the protagonist has that conversation with Kenneth Branagh, but then Kenneth Branagh walks into the room, beats him up, and then goes back in time and then has that conversation that we just watched happened. And it just fucks my mind so much. I'm like, how does that work?
I'm really glad they did that, because I understood it the second time.
Yes.
Yeah. It does remind me of, you know, in Red Dwarf in Future Echoes, when, like, Lister sees the future of Rimmer having this gibberish conversation with him, and then it happens again, and then it makes sense because now we see he's reacting to Lister reacting to the conversation. It reminded me of that a lot.
Isn't there also that episode where everything is backwards, isn't it?
Yes. Well, that's why I pithily put on my Letterboxd review, where it's basically the backwards episode with guns.
Yeah. But also, isn't there an episode of Red Dwarf where they have a fight and they don't feel the effects of it until like an hour later or something like that?
I mean, backwards sort of does that. Or it's like they feel, because their injuries get worse and then it happens when they're fine.
Yeah.
Which is what happened in this as
definitely
well.
happened in Tenet, didn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, so we'll move on. So those are the main problems of it. But I think there is a lot of good here. And like the main thing is, this is, as a cinema spectacle, the film is fantastic.
Yeah.
Very well done.
Like, all the action set pieces were really well done.
It looks amazing.
It does.
Yeah, basically everything was practical. Like, apparently this has, like, the least VFX shots of any Nolan film.
You could tell as well.
Yeah. As Nick, we discussed earlier, like, instead of just filming things and then putting it backwards in editing software, they just did the practical effects backwards.
Yeah,
which was really weird.
Yeah, like the things where he, like, where the bullet reverses from the table up into his hand when he's supposed to be like dropping in reverse. They actually just had it on like a cord and pulled it through, so it like rose up, which is, arguably sort of over-engineering the problem. But I mean, it's a really cool thing I like about Nolan is this philosophy of trying to get things in camera, because it does have some really great sort of impact of the effects. Because especially if we talk about things like the plane hitting the building in at the airport,
yes,
that could happen in, like I say, a Fast and Furious film, and it would just elicit basically no response because we'd know it's all sort of CGI.
But
knowing that they bought a real like old, decommissioned 747. They built the building, they crashed into it for real. Like I've read it up, it is definitely they did it.
That is amazing.
And it has so much more weight and impact for seeing this thing happen in camera.
Yeah.
And the same with the car chases. Again, they had stunt drivers driving the cars in reverse to get all those shots
that
working.
Was so cool as well. I really enjoyed that scene. The whole scene.
Yeah, I think the entire sequence of the heist of the truck carrying plutonium leading into that then backwards car chase, that was the highlight of the film for me.
Yeah, it was so good. But like we thought it was the climax of the film.
I genuinely I did think that would be the climax.
I think it's a stronger climax than the actual climax. The aforementioned shootout. I think that has much more weight. It's much more interesting and sort of original.
One of my favourite scenes was when they go back to the airport and he has to fight himself in reverse.
That was a really clever reintegration, actually.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I loved that scene. That was so good. But also what was really good is when you first saw that scene, you thought he was getting absolutely wrecked by this guy, this inverted guy. And then you re-see that scene and you're like, oh mate, he's getting wrecked by his original self.
Yeah.
And it's just because of the time, they're both just struggling so much.
Yeah.
I just thought that scene was amazing. I thought that was really, really clever and like very, very entertaining. And I don't think they made enough use of their gimmick, so the reversing of time in the climax.
Exactly. I think that was probably the best usage of like the whole how the time version can work. You know, in terms of the plot, that was the best example of it. And again, like it doesn't do much at the end with it, I don't think.
Especially because those two scenes, they feel like in the film, like they happen so far apart from each other. So like the first scene where it's like going in normal time feels like right at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And then when they're going back through it, it feels like right at the end of the film. So it's just like, it's amazing how it's kind of come full circle. You just appreciate it a lot more because of how well thought out the film is.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
There's a lot of callbacks that are really good. I kept looking out, because obviously they've got these inverted bullets. So I kept looking out for bullet holes everywhere, just being like, oh, is someone going to die now?
And like, so because I work at the cinema, I unfortunately saw bits of the film before I saw it for real, so I knew some things. And one thing I saw was the exposition scene where they explain the like, oh, your lungs can't breathe inverted oxygen or whatever, so you need to have the mask. Yeah. So when I watched it, anytime someone was wearing a mask, it was like, oh, is that a person?
Right. Yeah, I see.
Speaking of reintegration, actually, there's a couple missed opportunities I felt with it. So like, you know, they talk about if you encounter yourself in the wrong timeline and you meet, your particles will annihilate.
Yeah.
Like in Time Cop, if anyone's seen that.
I have not.
I was really disappointed that never happened.
Yeah.
Because that's such a, I mean, like, that's a really interesting point to bring up and, like, have as a specific thing. And then just, it never happened at all. That'd be a great little thing for the climax.
Yeah. I think it's a very hard thing to visualise, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, Time Cop managed it, even with really rubbish 90s effects. But
I just feel like that's, like, another thing to add to that already very complex film. I just don't think that would really fit in for what they were trying to do. Maybe
not. I just felt, I don't know, one little fight, you know, during the big fight at the end, just some soldier gets pushed into another soldier and just poof.
Yeah.
I just feel like, don't bring it up if you're not going to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Also, they'd say, with a Tenet word, they're like, oh, it will open some doors for you, but for some people, you know, you
some
good
say doors and some bad doors.
Yeah.
But as far as I recall, I don't think they ever actually said Tenet and got into trouble for it. It was only
ever positive things, wasn't it? Yeah.
Also, that was sort of just dropped after the first act as well.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that'd be a much more pervasive kind of thing, but
yeah, me too.
So I think obviously, I actually did really enjoy it, and I think I do want to see it again because I feel like I'd enjoy it more on a rewatch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My initial thought was, I don't know if you guys thought this, but the editing was so fast and so intense. It's like at this breakneck pace that you never get a chance to absorb anything that's happening.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like, even though it's 2.5 hours, it's so sort of blisteringly fast paced and just sort
Yeah.
of charges through.
There's no downtime, or there
Yeah.
is, but it's just very brief. You know?
Yeah, but yeah, the whole thing feels very pressurized, and I think that's probably why. I think that helps, well, not helps, but hinders the thing with the dialogue about how he just doesn't go in, because it's all constant all the time.
Yeah.
And on the action scenes, it's fantastic, but yeah, it doesn't really. It doesn't have the right contrast at points. Yeah.
Is it more like with the whole like editing thing, with it being very like fast paced and almost like intense, and there's no downtime? I feel like that's almost in the perspective of the protagonist. Like, it just keeps going. Like, it doesn't stop.
Yeah,
It just keeps
but I mean,
building and building and building.
The story still does take place over, what, like 5 weeks or 4 or 5 weeks? And it felt like it might, it didn't feel like that. It felt like a day, maybe 2, had passed because it's just non-stop.
Okay, yeah, I know what you mean.
Because even they're supposed to be on this fucking ship for 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
And it just, even that was supposed to be downtime, and that downtime lasts for like 3 minutes between these 2 huge action scenes,
But then would you rather have it where it's like Interstellar, and Interstellar just feels so long, but that is only set over, well, for the main guy's perspective, Matthew McConaughey, like, it's only a couple of days for him.
Wow.
Would you rather have it like that, where it feels really slow?
I just think, like some Inception is certainly different, better paced,
Yeah.
But I think is slightly different because it's a heist film-ish.
Yes.
So you get the planning phase, which obviously helps a lot to explain what the fuck is going on. Whereas this, they sort of had that with the army planning bit, but that was more like, this is what we're going to do, and you see what they're going to do, but it's so fucking fast, and then there's 2 of it happening at the same time, because there's the reverse version and the forward version. It's like, there's so much visual information happening right now, my brain can't comprehend this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the trade-off is like the blisteringly fast pace works if your story's simple enough you don't need to spend long thinking about it.
Yeah.
But because Tenet is so convoluted and so complex, it's almost too fast for its own massive plot. I think you have to do sort of like almost one or the other.
Yeah.
Or vary itself more.
Yeah. It was good though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend it, and certainly in the cinema while it's still there. Like it is.
Yeah, definitely.
As Nolan always delivers. Like,
If your ears can handle it.
Yeah, loudest film I've seen in the cinema.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. It's so fucking loud.
Speaking of sound, though, I was very surprised that Nolan didn't use Hans Zimmer.
Oh, so yeah, Hans Zimmer. He had a scheduling conflict with Dune, which is why he couldn't do it.
Oh, I see. I was wondering why.
It's Ludwig Göransson doing it, who's done The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I really love the Tenet score. I can't wait to try it on Spotify. But that music was so tense and sort of built so well with the action scenes. And also, there's a lot of like reversed notes going on with that, and really interesting motifs.
Exactly. I want to reverse the music and see what it sounds like. Like whether they planned it, the music, so that it could also be played backwards when it's the inverted scenes. Because that would just be so fucking cool if they've done that.
It did remind me of the Westworld, like, main theme. Because, that's got a lot of inverted, reverse notes in it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I sort of heard that sort of in there somewhere.
Yeah. Like, all of the notes were, like, reversed. So it sounded so cool. And it also helped as well during the climax. So when you got the one group going in just like normal, and then the other group is going inverted, and then when you're seeing the inverted group, all the music is like that. It's all like inverted notes and stuff like that. all the music is back to front.
Yeah.
And it's so cool.
So to bring this sort of to a conclusion, where would you guys rank this relative to other Nolan films?
I think I enjoyed this more than Dunkirk, which is obviously his other most recent one.
You like this more than Dunkirk?
I think I did.
Well, they're two very different films.
Where do you rate Dunkirk then?
I mean, yeah, Dunkirk's not bad. Dunkirk's very, very good. But I think I enjoyed this more than Dunkirk.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay.
I don't think it's as good as the Batmans.
Any of them? Not even better than Dark Knight Rises?
Maybe it probably is better than Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
Poor Dark Knight Rises.
Well, it's not great though.
Yeah, but I don't think it doesn't get a fair nick. Like, it's a good film. It just pales in comparison to the others.
It's all right. I mean, I saw it twice in the space of a week, so I'm sort of... See, Tenet, for me, I think it's definitely in his upper tier of work, but I still think Dunkirk and Memento and Dark Knight are all better than it, and probably The Prestige as well.
Oh, Prestige is banging, yeah. What about Inception?
What's Inception?
I'd have to rewatch both, but Tenet excites me more than Inception, but I think Inception's probably a better film.
Yeah.
Like, it's a more comprehensible, more coherent film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I never saw Inception in a cinema, though, so, I don't know how...
No, me neither, actually.
Like, I'm not sure how Tenet would hold up on a rewatch at home, for example, once it's lost that sort of, that cinematic power.
I would like to see Inception in the cinema, actually.
Yeah. Well, it is, isn't it?
Wow, it's getting its 10th anniversary re-release, so...
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
maybe I can see it.
It's a 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
We'll all go on a trip to see Inception.
Yay!
That came out when we were 12. Is that film
Yeah.
12? Or is it 15?
It is a 12, yeah.
Surprised me.
Yeah.
What did surprise me is that this Tenet's like a 12A, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, apparently it was... They had to cut one shot to make it a 12. When Elizabeth Debicki's getting the shit kicked out of her by Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah.
They cut one shot, and otherwise it would have been a 15.
Which is weird because, I mean, there's basically no swearing in it.
Well, that's the great thing about Nolan is he makes very sort of tense and sort of like, dramatic films, but he never has the swearing or any of the like on-screen violence to make it a 15.
Yeah.
Which is very, like, Dark Knight is very, like, gritty and dark and violent, but because it doesn't tick the boxes to make it a 15, it's still a 12. Which is why it gets so complained about so much on the BBFC. Like, it's the most complained about film, apparently.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, because there's like, oh, it's a 12 and my son likes Batman, and it's like, why has a guy got a pencil in his eye?
Like, why is a guy being hanged outside of an office building?
Well, exactly.
But all of his films, like, looking at them, I would have just assumed that they were 15s, but I guess they're not.
Yeah. Well, it's the power of like tone and thematics, which is why the BFC has to judge things on thematics as well as just like on-screen stuff.
Right.
Basically because of Nolan.
Yeah, I was very surprised when it came up as 12A. I was like, are you joking? Really?
Yeah, and there were like some 7-year-old kids in there. And I was like, if I don't understand this, you ain't got a fucking chance.
Exactly. But then also having the whole like inverted bullets going through people. It's just like, oh my god, children.
Yeah, someone gets shot in the face.
Yeah.
Children see people getting shot all the time.
People get crushed by buildings, get trapped in walls, blown up by planes.
I can't see kids enjoying that.
No, probably not. Certainly not young ones.
No, they find it boring.
Because even with the intense action scenes, it's sort of like too confused. It's not simple enough.
No. They find it boring because they just wouldn't be able to understand it. I mean, I would assume that there are probably some like 12-year-olds that be able to like understand it and follow it. But I feel like most just won't care.
Yeah. I think as a 12-year-old seeing it, it'll probably be like, oh my god, look at all this cool shit going on, but like have no concept of it.